Whether you're just starting to explore AI or already experimenting with these tools, this session will help you future-proof your career, elevate your impact, and position yourself as a strategic leader in the age of intelligent design. This is what we hope for you today. It is my pleasure to welcome our expert panelists as well today, who are the people who are going to be having this exchange with you and with each other as well about this AI for instructional design. So welcome Ronnie Ashline and Matt Saavedra. So Ronnie, in her bio, she says, if you want to transform boring e-learning into something memorable and useful, she is here to help. Ronnie has spent 20 years building learning experiences and has long been an active learner and a self-taught critic of the implementation of experiential and blended learning. In addition to consulting, designing, and building for schools, companies, and other organizations, she also enjoys trying out new learning methods with her 2 young children. So that's Ronnie. Welcome, Ronnie. Matthew Saavedra is a learning and development manager at Life Centre Northwest with more than 15 years of experience in the field of e-learning and instructional design. He has worked on instructional design jobs and implemented large-scale learning management systems for corporate and public institutions. And at Life Centre Northwest, Saavedra supports workplace learning and development for organ donations across Washington, Idaho, Alaska, and Montana. So a very warm welcome to our two experts today, and they are both instructors, longtime instructors, and also award-winning instructors with our instructional design, e-learning for instructional design certificate. So they indeed are the experts today to engage with you on this subject matter. So welcome to you, everybody joining us today too. I see we have over 60 people joining. That's wonderful. Thank you for being with us today. And now I am going to hand it over to our excellent panelists for today, Ronnie and Matt.
Thank you so much, Miriam. And I just want to say that Matt and I have worked together for 10 years.
Yeah.
And we have never had a chance to sit down like this.
That's true.
And have a conversation.
We've been very virtual in our interactions.
I know, right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in fact, I don't think I've seen you in a pretty long time.
Yeah, years,
for sure.
years.
All right, so we're going to start off today with controversy. We're going to start with some controversial questions, some hot takes. So my question to you, Matt, is do you still use an M dash, or are you afraid that everyone's going to think it's actually AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll admit I didn't use the M dash much pre-ChatGPT and other LLMs that I've used. And it's funny to see kind of how often some of these models will insert that into their output. But I actually kind of like it, and it's actually made me use it more because it's almost inspired me to use the M dash. So, you know, thank you, OpenAI and LLMs. I love it.
It actually made me look up the difference between an M dash, an N dash, and a dash. And they all have different uses, so I learned something new.
It's true, yeah. And a great thing to ask AI later if you're confused as I was too. So my hot take question for Ronnie is, do you say please and thank you to AI tools? This can be a little bit controversial because with every prompt, every query, there's tokens being used, energy being consumed, money being spent. So do you keep it nice or do you just dispense with the niceties?
Right. I guess some people would say being nice is bad for the environment and
it's true.
In that land. But I think that it's so important to keep our human aspects of ourselves. Now, we really want to also always recognize that Gen AI is not human, doesn't have feelings. But, you know, even when we just had Alexa, the unsmart Alexa, I used to make my kids say please and thank you. And I even put in cues so that they said something mean to Alexa. Alexa would say, you're not allowed to talk to me that way. You can't use me for 5 minutes, no, shut down. And so I think that, you know, there's other ways that you can be frugal with your tokens by making sure your prompts are well written, so you don't have to ask over and over again. So I keep the pleases and thank yous in.
I'm with you. I like that approach. I like to use them just because it feels natural and how I would converse with anybody else. I've also seen the Terminator movies a few times and, try an activity interview.
I was trying to not get there, but you're right. And, just as general safety measure is to stay,
Stay on the
friendly.
good side.
Yeah.
You never know. It's safe. All right. So the first section we're going to dig into with you all is the hard truths of AI. And we're going to start with a question for Ronnie. What traditional skills or habits have you had to unlearn because AI simply does it faster or maybe better or more efficiently than you can?
I have to say probably Gen AI does everything faster than a human can, but
This is true.
there are some things that I will catch myself doing and then go, oh my gosh, I should not be doing this. That should be a Gen AI thing. And so one of them that I just thought of this morning, I am creating a final exam in Storyline for a training I'm building. And I have all the questions. And I thought, oh my gosh, now I have to go in and type all these questions into Storyline. And I was like, wait, there's a better way. And so I just, uploaded to Claude the template and I said, hey, can you take these questions and fill out this template for me? And it did it. And then
Awesome.
that's something that would have taken days.
Yeah.
Days before that. So
It's really the little things and finding those efficiencies throughout your day.
yeah, and I think it's so important because when AI first came out, I think everyone was seeing all the creative things it could do. And then it's like, no, we still want humans to be creative.
Yeah.
Do the undifferentiated tasks like, taking attendance or filling out a spreadsheet, like those are the things that we need to be utilizing AI for.
Yeah. Outsource with intention to the AI. I
Yes.
like it.
All right. What is the most ridiculous timeline you've seen made possible by AI? Something that would have been just impossible 5 years ago.
So for a lot of us instructional designers, we often get really short time requests from our clients, our business units, whoever it is that we're serving. And that happens to me all the time. So I recently tried to use AI to create a course from a single prompt. The prompt was about 2 to 3 sentences, and I used a particular application called Manus AI, which uses an agent-based workflow that doesn't require constant input after you submit the prompt. It can kind of intelligently execute the task in most cases without intervention. So I had to create a course, and what that meant for me in an e-learning context was it developed the lessons, the learning objectives, the knowledge checks, the assessments, and it even coded the HTML and the JavaScript and the CSS and all the components of the online course. And even one step further, I had asked it to package it up in SCORM. SCORM is a standard we use for learning management systems, and it did that. And I was able to import it in after about just 11 minutes after importing or entering the prompt in our LMS, and I had a finished course. Now, that's not to say it doesn't require human vetting, quality control, revisions, all of those things. But the fact that I could generate a first version draft just blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, if you can just give your AI agent the right learning objectives and have those enabling objectives really solid, it can really produce a lot of work.
Absolutely.
I didn't realize that let's say Claude, I think it was Claude, could create SCORM packages until it was like, would you like me to create a SCORM package for you?
I guess I would.
Well, yes, please, because you have a nice, please do.
Yeah, and different variants of SCORM or other standards. So
Right. It's really interesting.
it's amazing.
Trying to think about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
guys, we do have questions coming in.
Yes.
And just to say for everybody, because I forgot to mention this at the start, as you can see, we're having a very conversational style exchange here with Ronnie and Matt, with them asking each other questions. But we're also going to, as we go along and after each little section, we are going to give you a chance for questions, and we will see how many we can get to as the flow continues. So just to, after that first section, One of the questions here is, when we write on AI, and I presume with AI tools, how many of these tools or agents function the same and how many not?
Well, I'll start this
Sure.
from just a technical level and then maybe like take it even deeper, but a lot of times all of these Gen AI tools are built on just a few different learning language models, you know, like OpenAI has their ChatGPT large language models, and they, you know, train them and progress. We're up to ChatGPT 6, Claude, Gemini. So you have these large language models, and then the tools and those apps that we're using are built on those language models. So that's a lot of times, a lot of those new apps that you see, that's how they're getting their information. Yeah, did you?
Yeah, I'd agree, and I'd say there's kind of the big three right now, large language models. Google has Gemini, OpenAI has ChatGPT. That also is part of Microsoft's Copilot program currently. And then there's Claude. And there's variation between all those, and you see over time where one will leapfrog the other in a particular area or dimension, but then usually that happens again to somebody else. So it's a constant state of each kind of competing with each other and raising the bar, but at the end of the day, they're all very similar. You get very similar outputs.
Yeah, so for example, you might be asking ChatGPT a question. If you're using the free version, and I'm not sure, you have to tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe the free version does not search internet. It's just the language model.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it does now. They might have changed that.
Yeah, but when you have a paid version, not only do you have that language model, but basically the internet is your RAG, your augmented files that are pulling into the LLM.
Absolutely. Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Okay, and then one that's instructional design related. So this person asks, whenever we use AI for learning, should we give additional instructions to the tool for highlighting potential learning challenges and how to overcome them?
So we were gonna get to that. We can
Okay.
maybe skip to it now.
Sure.
Do you wanna start with?
Yeah, I guess my general response to that would be the more specific you can be with the prompt, usually the better your results. So whatever parameters you want the LLM to consider, whether it's constraints, challenges, goals, it's good to feed that into your query. And one of the tricks I've learned along the way is actually asking the LLM to help you with your prompt. And you can say, hey, ChatGPT, I'm trying to write this sort of prompt. This is my role. This is what I'm hoping to achieve. Can you improve my prompt for me? And in most cases, they'll have very good advice and ways to tighten up your prompt for better understanding.
Yeah, and you can personalize your GPT to do things like ask clarifying questions before going on with the answer. The other one is, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but there's something called prompt engineering, and I know everyone's heard of most people have heard of prompt engineering, and some people maybe are afraid because the word engineering is in it and it sounds a little daunting. But the idea is that you're really articulating block by block what you're looking for. So it's like, what exactly are you asking for? What data do you have? Do you have any examples? What's the context around it? And then how do you want the answer given to you? And so, those are kind of the starting points of what you want to put into your prompts. And then as you get better and better, you'll learn to build better and better prompts. And if you, always finish your prompt with ask clarifying questions, then you're gonna get that. And then when you build a prompt, so one of the things I do, and I don't know if you have this, is I have a prompt library. Do you have
Yeah, indeed. I tend to save them. I put them in a Google document and I just copy and paste interesting ones as I encounter them over time.
Yeah, my biggest one is when I'm creating an exam or a quiz, I use the same prompt because, and it says, please create a multiple choice quiz that is scenario based, that has one correct answer and 3 distractors, that is for this group, and I have a blank, and doesn't use all of the above or none of the above. So those are kind of my parameters that I start with. So I have that library because I find myself typing out all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
cut and paste.
And you're maintaining some design consistency and consistency in the content by using those same
Yeah.
parameters over and over again for different needs.
So I think you'll get better as you go, and you'll get better as you get results that you don't like. Because you'll be like, well, I don't want it to look like, I didn't want that to be a mouse. I wanted that to be an elephant, whatever. So then you correct the prompts and then you get that.
Absolutely. Kind of learning by doing and trial and error with
Yeah.
LLMs. Love it.
And just,
One more question?
yeah, I'm going to quickly answer this one. Is this webinar only for instructors? No, it's for anybody who's interested in the concept of instructional design and the use of AI tools in any, it's just a way of expanding your understanding and use of AI tools if you are not even an instructor. So we welcome you all. The next question, just before we move on to the next section. Oh, and it's specifically to do with, will we have access to free versions of these tools during the program? I presume that's
Okay, yeah, I'll answer
learning
those.
instructional design program.
Yeah, so first of all, what Miriam said is everybody's welcome here. These skills and what we're talking about are super translatable to every
Absolutely.
field. And then the question specifically about the course. So we have a course starting in January that's integrating AI into learning, design, and development. And while you're taking that course, we will focus on free trials. So the free versions of AI and Gen AI. I do recommend that, and you don't have to, but it is probably worthwhile, in my opinion, to choose one AI agent and get a monthly subscription just for the course. And then you can always quit afterwards. But it gives you so much more of an idea of just what Gen AI can do if you just, have that paid subscription just for a short amount of time.
Great advice. Yeah, you can get a lot out of the free trials, and it seems like most of the subscriptions aren't set up to be stuck with you for a year. You can start or stop anytime you want.
Right.
Yeah, great. All right.
Okay, moving on. So the next section, what AI can do versus can't do.
Okay, I have a question for you. And it's gonna be a complete surprise. I know you haven't read these questions before.
Not at all.
All right, so fitting, when do you use an AI agent like ChatGPT or Claude? And when do you use in-product tools like Articulate, Canva?
It's a tough question to answer. I don't want to give the generic "it depends" answer, but that's my honest answer to that. We'll start with Articulate 360. Articulate 360 is a suite for creating e-learning experiences. They have a number of products under that brand. One of those is Rise. So when you're creating a Rise course, you can interact with their AI assistant right there in the course and have it do things like create learning objectives, assessment questions, knowledge checks. It can rewrite content for you, actually generate content and lessons. Sometimes I will use the in-app AI assistant, but it really depends on the quality of results. And for Articulate, I believe they're using their own large language model. So they're not kind of outsourcing those AI queries to ChatGPT, OpenAI, or Gemini, as some of the other tools do. So if I don't get the result that I like within the assistant, I'll usually try the assistant first, and then I'll pivot to one of my standbys if the results aren't what I'm expecting or what I need for the particular project. So it just really depends, and you will see the strengths and weaknesses of all of these assistants, as well as the standalone LLMs as you navigate over time.
Yeah, and sometimes I use one agent to check the other agent, like you were saying, asking the agent to write the prompt for you. Sometimes I'll take something that Claude did and I'll ask ChatGPT, hey, is this accurate? Does it look good?
Hey, this is what Claude said.
I know, right? Like, by the way, Claude said this is great.
Yeah, I love it. All right, well, I have a kind of a controversial question for you. So as an instructional designer, educators, even classroom teachers, we spend a lot of time thinking about assessments, and that often boils down to creating quizzes and tests. And for me, I'm not a natural at that. I don't feel like I'm the best quiz question writer or assessment writer. So my question for you is, can AI write a better quiz than instructional designers can in general?
So I am going to say yes, if you write a really good prompt
Yeah,
and you feed the right information into your AI, your bot, your agent, or whatever you're using. And the reason why I'm saying that is not because instructional designers are all going to lose their job because of AI, but because we have, we're human and we get tired. And agents don't ever get tired. They will go and go and go. They're like the happy assistant who works 24 hours a day and is always on call.
no coffee needed.
So, yeah, right. And so when you think about things like writing a scenario for each question, coming up with 4 answers, one of them correct, and then having individual feedback for each one of those.
Yeah.
Just because of the load that it is, we start to get tired, we make mistakes, we kind of go, oh, you know what? I was gonna have feedback for each response, but now it's just gonna be correct and incorrect. Because you've all done that, like we've done that,
We've
right?
done that, it's true.
Because it's tiring. So, yeah, I think it can.
Yeah, I'd agree. It helps with the tedium, and I think your point of qualification is really important. Really comes down to your prompt and the quality of your prompt to get the result you're looking for.
And always double check, because the other day, I don't even know how this happened, so weird things that happen in AI. All of my questions, the responses, the possible answers were for the question after. And so I'm like checking it, I'm like, thank goodness I
That doesn't
checked. And I'm
sound
like,
right.
That's not right. So mistakes can be made.
It happens.
Yeah. Miriam, do you have any questions?
So we do have, oh, whoops, excuse me, back on video. It's a general question.
Sure.
Somebody is asking, say more about the AI course starting. Oh, we have 2 questions. One about, share more about the AI course starting in January. And of course, we do
Yeah.
invite people to sign up for our information session. For those, if you go to the website, you'll get a chance to do that. But if you want to relate it to what we're talking about today, just say a little about that. Let's do that.
Sure. Yeah, so this is a new course that I think was born out of need, right? We had started putting Gen AI into our courses, and we teach the English or the ELID instructional design courses, and we would put it in there, but we were starting to realize that we're just running out of space. And so we built out a specific course. It starts with just assessing your instructional design skills to make sure, like, think about cleaning your data, right? Assess your design skills to make sure that you can come up with something that is useful with AI. So that's where we start. And then from there, the sky's the limit. We go through talking about prompt engineering in depth. We talk about the different types of AI and the pockets underneath the general scope of AI. And then we will actually build out, every week we're building an asset out that can go into your portfolio that will demonstrate your ability to design using AI. So I think it's a really useful course.
That's terrific. And if you're thinking about joining the program, one of the things we focus on is a portfolio. We have a whole course section to that, and all of the courses touch on developing assets that you can use into your portfolio. So it sounds like it's going to be a great experience for folks new to AI.
Yeah. And not to say that our ELID course doesn't have, it's just, there's only so much time. In fact, it was going to be a 6-week course, and then I couldn't fit it in 6 weeks. So it's an 8-week course because there's that much to explore and learn.
That's exciting, starting in January.
Okay, I am seeing 2 very interesting questions that have come in related to obligations and ethics around use in this context. And there's another one related to Claude. Do you want to handle those ethics obligations ones right now, or does that relate to a better?
Oh, shoot.
Okay, we'll go
Yeah.
straight through these
Let's
questions
try it.
then. All right, so what obligations as instructional designers do we have to cite an AI platform as a source for our curriculum and its components? I wonder how Purdue's OWL would cite AI as a source in either MLA or APA.
So, the course does talk about this too, and then I have a book that talks about this and actually gives specific examples of how you can cite using AI. And I will say that whenever you're using AI, it is best practice to say so. And the way that you do it is say, this was edited using whatever you're using. The thoughts and ideas expressed in this writing are all the authors, or something like that. And that's a really good way to do it. And then you can actually ask ChatGPT how to cite itself
I was
using
thinking the same.
MLA, APA, Chicago style, whatever you know.
You don't have to remember all those styles and the
Yeah.
nuances.
And then you really, you can ask ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini how to post, the statement saying that you're using Claude, you're using Gen AI. So it's like, this statement was written by Gen AI, and then it's the Gen AI statement.
I have a similar approach. I think it's always good to be transparent, build credibility with your audience. And one way to do that is to tell them where the sources were and how you came to the information. I also think it's appropriate to check in with your organization and see what their comfort level is and what is okay to put into a prompt and what you need to omit. Anytime you have personally identifiable information or some kind of proprietary information, you may not want that going into some of these tools. So you can be careful, and it's always good to have a conversation and make sure that you're aligned with the security policies of your organization or institution, as well as any kind of laws that your organization might be bound to. And there's a number of them, like HIPAA, GDPR, many of them out there. So yeah, proceed with caution, but proceed honestly and openly is kind of my rule of thumb.
Yeah, I would avoid using any personal identifiable information just altogether. Leave your students out of the AI chat. The other one, I just about forgot what I was gonna say. Because you're gonna make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And so it might be you forgot to take the end of the chat response where they ask, do you want us to do this and that for you?
That's a
And then
telltale
you cut
sign.
and paste it and you send it off. And maybe you looked through it and you did all the things, but you just forgot that. It's a lot less embarrassing to make that mistake when you have ahead of time expressed that this was used, this was made with help of that AI agent.
Indeed, I've made that very mistake myself, just in haste.
I
It's easy
have
to
too.
do.
And the related question, which you've answered to a certain extent already, is do you think it is ethical to create something with AI, then claim that you created without sharing the part about using AI assistance? I think
that's an easy
Oh,
no.
yeah.
It's not okay.
not ethical,
I mean,
right?
There are so many artists and creators that are doing the hard work. And it's so funny because we keep seeing the sort of videos.
Oh yeah, Sora videos have been a hot topic the last couple of
I
weeks.
know. And it's watermarked on there, so we know it's Gen AI. So just I think it's really important to appreciate artists right now and creators for the work that they do. And if you're gonna pretend that you made something you didn't make, then it's enough.
Yeah, I'd agree. And for those that might not know, Sora refers to OpenAI's text to video. They released a version 2 recently, and there's been a lot of clips floating around on social media, on YouTube and other sites. If you're curious, I'd suggest searching for Sora 2 clips. You'll see a lot of interesting content. You may not like all of it, historical figures being represented, celebrities, public figures, but it's fascinating. And the quality of these tools is really advancing at a rapid pace, which is amazing to see.
Yeah, I was watching deer swim in somebody's backyard pond. That was the AI clip that I saw the other day. And I was like, okay, I know that it's fake, but that is adorable.
That's adorable. My favorite was watching Mario get pulled over in Mario Kart and get a citation, and then he drove off from the police officer. Yeah, lots of fun, but be cautious.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, there is a question about Claude. Do you want to address that now?
Sure.
Okay, about Claude, I thought that was primarily for coding. It sounds like there's more use cases than I knew. Can you validate that and perhaps elaborate some on its various uses or how it compares to other AI tools outside of just coding?
Yeah, so Claude, I do use Claude for coding. It's not perfect. You still have to go, I mean, I will guarantee you whatever Claude spits out will not actually function the first time you put it in. But it does write pretty good code. I mean, well, okay. We're talking to somebody who does not write very good code. So to me, I'm
It's all
like, this is
relative, right?
great. But it's actually used for multiple things. It can create any text that you want. It can even create small icons and things like that. Claude tends to be, I think, the cautious AI. And ChatGPT tends to be the fun, spontaneous AI.
That's true. OpenAI is usually kind of pushing the boundaries of what's considered acceptable, safety, all these things. Claude takes a more cautious approach, but all of these tools are good. I would say are good all-purpose AI tools, whether it's Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, or some other one like DeepSeek.
And you can actually, there's tools that you can use, and I've already forgotten any of the ones I mentioned earlier, where you can compare a response across multiple AI agents to see how they respond differently. But if you are coding, Amazon Q Developer is a really good tool to help you troubleshoot or debug or write code too. So there's a lot of things out there.
Excellent tips.
Yeah. Okay, there's another question about the certificate offered in January. Would that certificate be useful for someone who does not already have a degree in instructional design or who is not already a teacher? I know some things about instruction, but my degree is a master in library science.
That is such a brilliant degree to have.
Yeah.
First of all, I love people who do library science for, as their major and do that for a living. So applaud you for that.
Yes, indeed.
They're interesting people. If you meet someone who is a librarian, like
Information
professionally,
school.
you're like, wow, they're amazing. So yes, you can definitely use that certificate within your LinkedIn or have it, in your CV or your resume. And people do look at that. The University of Washington puts out great programs and has really great, really good history of academics and even continuum college programs. So it does have weight if you say, I got this from UW. And so I'd say even for the ELID, the instructional design course, which is a 4 courses over 6 months.
Yeah.
And the 8-week Gen AI course, those both would carry weight. And I will say also, I have not seen any non-degree types of courses that are as in-depth as the one that we're going to be producing in January.
It's awesome. For the ELID program that Ronnie was referencing, which stands for E-Learning and Instructional Design Certificate Program, we have a very diverse student body over the years. In fact, that's one of the things I enjoy most. We have people from all walks of life. Maybe they had an education background, maybe they were in some completely different field and they're doing a career pivot. We see people who are public educators looking to shift into corporate learning. Every type of situation we see, but we don't really turn away people based on your academic background, your work background. So if you're interested in learning and you want to dig into this world of e-learning or through the AI certificate program, you're welcome and we'd love to have you there.
All right. There's a pretty large question here that I think may come at any point.
Okay.
How's the memory of AI versus humans?
So yeah, I mean, that's very personifying of something that is, not alive, right? So it's not quantifiable, right? But if you think of a computer chip in a data center, you can't quantify how that compares to a brain. I will say, I think my experience is AI agents can get confused a little bit faster than we can usually. And so that's something that I think we have on AI. The other one is AI agents and Gen AI, they don't have emotions and they don't understand things. What they're doing is they're following a pattern, right? So it's algorithms, they understand and recognize patterns. So even when it's coming up with an answer for you, it's doing it based on statistical data. So the cat ran through and then it's gonna go, okay, I have 10 choices. What's the most likely one that it's gonna be?
Little
And
Family Feud style here.
yeah,
Most common
exactly.
answer is.
Yeah, so they're not, our brain is better because we have a brain.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, except for like when I can't remember a word because I've been talking all day long.
Which happened to me today. I will say another way to look at memory though is that a lot of the programs, if you want to opt in for it to have a history of your prompts over time, it will do that. And that can prove valuable in a lot of instances because as you enter more and more prompts over the course of the months, weeks, and years, the system learns more about you. So it can infer more about what you're asking in a prompt in the future. Sometimes it gets that wrong and makes the wrong inference and totally takes things into a weird place. But if you're using something like a paid account on ChatGPT, it has a very long memory and it will remember those details.
And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's not good.
That's true.
In fact, I didn't realize ChatGPT did that and I asked it to do something for me and it's like, oh, would you like to do that like you did it the other day? And I'm like,
Who told you to do it that way?
because Claude, it's a new conversation, it starts over. Yeah. But one thing that is comparable about our brains is the complexity of those neurons, right? When you think
Yeah.
about how information is stored, it's quite complex. Nobody could tell you exactly how AI is brained, right? And it's on different dimensions, and we can't even fathom dimensions past the 3 that we know. And that's working at like 10 dimensions, and we can't do that.
Yeah, complex. Great question.
Okay, I am going to say, so we won't get to absolutely all the questions. There's still some interesting ones coming in, but I think we're going to let Ronnie and Matt move on to their next section that they titled The New Value Stack.
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. I'll take the next one for Ronnie here. So this is a great question, I think. Would you hire someone who refuses to use Gen AI? Is there room in this field for IDs that don't want to use AI tools?
This is a hard one for me. I'm gonna say I would not hire an instructional designer who refused to use AI. I'm open to people who are skeptical about it and open to people who resist even. But I think, think about computers, right? You had human computers way back in the day, and there's 3 very famous human computers that we have a book and movie on. And Catherine.
Hidden Numbers, wasn't it?
Catherine, Betsy, and I can't think of the other person's name, but anyway, we know these women were terrific mathematicians, right? And could solve these complex computational equations and algorithms. And then computers came around to do that. And, some people wanted to resist and say, no, we can do it better
Right.
because it just needs that human touch. And then these women were like, we're not gonna try to compete. We're going to be the experts at using those computers. And I think the same is true for instructional design. To me, it's like asking an accountant not to use a calculator, right?
Right.
Don't fight it. Find ways to make it empower you.
Yeah, I kind of compare it to what it felt like for businesses and organizations in the late 90s, early 2000s, as the internet was really picking up steam and becoming more normalized, not just for businesses, but for our personal lives. And at the time, I think there was a lot of organizations and individuals that had, appropriate hesitancy over using this new technology. But over time, it's really bared out that the internet do lots of things we couldn't do before, helps us work in different ways we didn't before. So I try to take the standpoint of embracing it. And I think it's okay to exercise some judgment if somebody's cautious. Like we shouldn't dismiss a great candidate just because they're hesitant. But yeah, I'm with you.
I mean, a hesitant person is going to check their work better.
Yeah,
So I mean,
exactly.
there is an advantage to being somewhat skeptical. But But I think just over time, we're always afraid of technology. Writing was a form of technology. And I can imagine way back in the day before people knew to write, or had even hieroglyphs or anything like that. When that came about, there were probably some people who were like, those people, they'll never memorize anything again because now it can just be written down. That was the new technology. And so, there's always going to be that push of, oh, we're going to get rid of this wonderful thing. And I don't think that that's true.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yes. All right. So question for you.
Yeah.
What is AI good at now? And then where do you see it going in the future? What is AI going to be able to do in 5 years and 10 years?
The future one gets me. It's hard to make predictions, and it was hard for me in the year 2000 to predict where the internet was going, just like it's hard for me to predict where AI is going now. I can say that it started out as a text-based interface, understanding natural language text queries. And it's, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, or whatever, it's very good at handling text, processing text, understanding text, and generating text. You've seen over the last couple of years where image generation has improved vastly, as well as video generation. I would say it's not quite perfect, and there's a lot of instances where I will go to the Adobe stock photo library or some other image repository because I think I can find the image I need for my course faster. And then I could generate one with an AI prompt. But that's not always true, and I don't think that will be true in the future. I also see AI struggling with visuals that include text and images.
Yes.
I don't know, I've asked ChatGPT a few times, can you create like an infographic based on this? And I get some crazy spelling.
Yeah, but it doesn't really, because it's not comprehending the letters, right? Again, it's defuzzing basically into an image.
Yeah, it's using that statistical prediction to predict what it thinks the letter should be, and sometimes you just get gobbledygook.
Which would be great if you're like an animation company and you just want to have like fake text on like a newspaper somebody's reading, but like you really want somebody to see the actual words, it's not gonna show up.
But my best prediction on where this is all headed is that instructional designers will be able to create full learning experiences that will be coded, designed, and written by AI, but with human input, human vetting, and human revisions. It will get better and better at all the things, being able to create videos, maybe even branching scenarios, imagery that's relevant, and infographics. But it's a progression. I will say AI seems to be growing at an exponential rate faster than the internet did. So wait a couple of weeks, it may change. That's how fast it's moving right now.
Do you think that it's going to learn to tell people's emotions? I know that's like a really question. It's a hard question because there's so many great things about that and possibly so many not great things.
Potentially. I think, we as humans right now, Ronnie and I are sitting next to each other in the same physical space. I can read her body language, the motions of her hands, her eyes, the tone of her language. AI is not good at that nuance, right? And it doesn't necessarily have all the ability to see and hear us as a human does, although that's happening with robotics and there's lots of efforts underway. So maybe, but I'm skeptical.
It's wonderful. Like we're going to end up with the Turing test, where I'm like, okay, are you AI? Actually, that is a fun thing you can do is compete with AI to see if AI can make you think that it's a real person.
Yeah. I've seen videos of voice chat bots talking to each other and realizing they're talking to each other, and they actually switch to a different kind of computer language for efficiency's sake.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. Yes, for sure.
All right, Miriam, do we have any other questions?
We do, but again, I'm going to be selective here and
Sure.
kind of interesting to throw in here, just with what you're talking about there is, do you have any suggestions for AI agent evaluators? A quick search gives me Fiddler AI.
Oh, so evaluating a large language model. So I'm guessing we're talking about assessing those big ones, like we're talking about Gemini, ChatGPT. The best way, there's ways that you can test out an LLM that is, I think, different than what you're asking, because those are for big organizations who are building out an agent for their whole business. And there's a lot of technical ways that you can actually assess a model for bias, et cetera, et cetera. When we're talking about things like ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, those things, the way that you assess them is by using them. And asking it a question. For example, if you ask, so, and I have tested this and this is true. If you ask ChatGPT what to expect as a salary for, and say that you're a woman and you know that you're expecting that salary, what they give you, the range that they give you is less than what they tell you to expect as a man.
Wow.
That is not ChatGPT being biased. I think they need to be really careful about this. You know, junk in, junk out.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Where is it getting its information from? So, you know, don't take it personally that ChatGPT is telling women not to expect as much money as men. You know, blame society. It's just a mirror of what's happening around us. But you can always correct models like that by saying, don't use, you know, by actually putting into your prompt, and this is a question I was asked earlier, put into your prompt, please check for bias, please include, 50% men, 50% women, please, you know, include a racial diversity in your prompt, and you'll get better prompts that way.
It's a great tip. Yeah, I like your point about kind of garbage in, garbage out. If the data is biased or skewed, then that's the tools we're trained on and it comes from humans and we're all biased naturally as humans, then some of the responses are going to be biased as well.
Yeah.
I like that check that you're asking about.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing to mention is you need to constantly check, right? So if you're using something as an organization, you should have a process in place that that's just like a maintenance schedule you would have for a course or anything else, that you go back and you check, is it working? Are these, you know, how are the prompts working? You're getting feedback from your users, you're assessing how it's working within your environment.
There probably are some good rating systems out there and sites. I'm not familiar with most of those off the top of my mind. If any of you are, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, if we don't know, I mean, there's way more out there than any one person can give.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like your sentiment of you really just got to test it yourself and see.
And of course, there's a lot of interesting writing happening these days around that and around justice and ethical issues. And somebody's giving a shout out here to Stacey Abrams' book, Coded Justice. I think at this point, in the interests of time, we're going to have you guys move on to the essential skills for ID section, and then following up with action plan and opportunity mindset.
Yeah, sure. So my question for you is, what new skills, it looks different now as being an instructional designer than it did even 5 years ago. What new skills does an instructional designer need in order to be successful with Gen AI that goes beyond just prompt engineering?
Sure. It's a hard question to answer because this is going to vary for every individual and the roles they're seeking and the organizations they're looking to work for. But for me, at its most basic form is having curiosity and having intentional time set aside throughout your work week or work day to explore and test and try new things. It doesn't mean you have to know everything about AI all the time. It's impossible for any of us to keep up with the developments. Even if you tried to do that, it would drive you a little insane. But you can't learn about new developments and new trends and new possibilities and solutions until you get in there and experiment and test. So having some, desire to test, and we're all a little afraid of AI. I think technology in general can be intimidating, but it doesn't matter where you start. You just have to start somewhere. So for me, as an instructional designer, I look at our ADDIE process, analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. Every stage of that development model has opportunities where you can use AI. So if you haven't done that in the past, try using AI for a learning objective. Try using it to bat ideas around for a course outline. Maybe you want it to draft out some ideas for a lesson or for an assessment. Just jump in somewhere and that will lead you down different trails and different paths to other learning experiences. So I know I'm kind of giving a generic answer here, but I guess just willingness to engage with technology and explore is my number one skill.
That's great. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that that just learn and be curious is an important thing in any instructional design, just to explore what's out there,
Absolutely. So my question for you, Ronnie, is we talked about prompt engineering before. There's lots of ways to do prompts.
Mhm.
What makes a prompt good for you?
So, it really depends on what you need the prompt for. Like we were talking about earlier, we have prompt libraries. That when you find a really good prompt, save it, put it away somewhere so that it's retrievable. And I think that what makes a good prompt is that you are as specific as you can be. And that you have really understood the context that you're building around it. It's a good check, actually. So when we think about like how we come up with ideas, it's a reminder that we need to also consider things like, what's the context of this?
Yeah.
Right? When you're building instructional design, you need to think about that. Sometimes we forget because we're like, I have this great idea. We're going to do this thing.
Found a little thing.
Who's my audience? Is this what they really need to know? Right? And then we learn that how to write those prompts and how to ingest that into your prompts. So, and then like, I think ATD has an acronym, CARES, for their prompt engineering. I, in my book, talk about, and I don't have a fun acronym for it, so sorry, everybody, but the task, what specifically are you asking them to do? That's that like 0-shot prompt that you can put in and get a response, right? And then after that, what's the context? What's happening around this thing? Who is the audience for it? What are you doing? So context. And then after that, what data do you have to input into your agent to get that answer, or into your Gen AI to get that answer? And if you have examples, give an example, because ChatGPT, Claude, they all love examples. And if you show them one pattern, they like patterns.
Yeah.
So they're gonna, follow that pattern. And then the last one, and this is one that I forget often, and then have to go, oh, can you do, it's output.
Oh,
How do you want the information back to you? I can't tell you how many times I'll ask the question, I'll get everything in there, and then it spits out something in Markdown. And I'm like, oh, actually, I needed it this way. Or I've even had it where sometimes it will think for some reason that the end product is supposed to be an image. So do all of this thinking, and it's going and going and going. You're like, gosh,
what's taking so long?
Yeah. And then you get like this picture and you're like, oh, I wanted words. So make sure that you make it clear what the output is, because it can do things like SCORM packages. It can do an HTML file. It can do, JSON or like Python or any of those fun coding languages. I actually used it for SSML, which is what you use to program natural voice models. So, you're always trying to get your natural voice model to sound more natural.
Yeah, more human.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm going to give this a try. So I put in a script and I said, using your knowledge of, context, whatever, can you create an SSML for this script that makes it sound dramatic and energetic? And it did it. And I can't say it worked out terrifically, but I was impressed that it could actually do that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify, Ronnie mentioned ATD. We mean Association for Talent Development. Terrific association, been around a long time, great for educators. Try checking out their website for more information about their prompt model. Another tool I want to plug is something called Section AI. This came across my radar from a LinkedIn post recently. Section AI is a paid service to help organizations become proficient in AI. But they also have a free tier that will take you through an AI-driven activity that is customized to you and your organization and your role to learn how to write prompts. And it actually asked me for my title, who I work for, and a couple of other demographic things. And it constructed exercises that are really relevant, really specific to my industry and my role. And it took me through critiques of prompts, what I could change, what I could do to strengthen them. It was really an example of AI teaching me how to use AI better in a very personalized way. And it was just kind of an amazing experience. So check out Section AI if you get a chance.
That's awesome. I have to check it out too.
Yeah.
Actually.
Terrific. Well, we're getting close on time. I think maybe we can ask another question or two, or do you want to go to the audience?
Let's go, what are the questions? We want to answer
Yeah,
your
I'd love to hear
questions.
from
We
you.
can talk forever.
Okay, I am going to throw in this one because again, it's kind of broad.
Sure.
We've been addressing some of it already. If a class is fully created in AI, which I'm not sure we are in that, at that stage, where do subject matter experts come in? So,
Yeah, so that is your input, that's your data, right? Now, a lot of our language models can read anything across the internet, so it has all that data, but a lot of times what we're dealing with is something that's organization specific, and there's some internal knowledge that needs to be there. And so gathering that content, and then of course, having your subject matter experts review what you've done, because if you don't, again, it makes mistakes.
Yeah.
And the worst part about AI that I find, and you can tell me I'm wrong, but when it starts to hallucinate, I feel like your conversation is basically done. Because trying to get out of that confusion that they've gotten, especially when it's a super long conversation that you're having, it's gonna continue to hallucinate, and trying to get
Sure.
it back is really hard. That's why you have your subject matter experts. They need to be a part of that. They need to be a part of the analysis and the design, right? They need to be able to look at what you've developed and to assess that it would work for their learners. They need to make sure the content is correct. Yeah, I think they're just as important, if not more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Terrific question.
Yeah.
Mary, do you have another one?
well, again, I'm looking at the time here.
Sure.
And do you want to go on to the action plan and opportunity mindset part?
Yeah,
So expand
actually,
on
this
that.
might be a great follow-up question. Just, if you're listening to this right now, you're thinking about what could I do next to learn? What are opportunities for me? So I'm going to ask this of Ronnie, and feel free to clarify with me, Ronnie, too. But what are some good resources that you'd recommend for beginners, or even people who feel like they're kind of seasoned AI pros at this point?
Yeah, so if you're a beginner, I would say some of the really friendly tools are in product tools. Canva is a really great one for producing images, and it's so user friendly. It's the first things that my kids learn to use in the classroom. Of course, kids can oftentimes do better than me anyway, but that's a really user friendly one. I would say ChatGPT, if you're looking for an agent specifically, is a really friendly agent to use. They're all friendly. Remember that all agents, their goal is to give you the answer that you want. So they're always going to be nice to you, which is also really great because sometimes you have to ask it hard questions. But I would say, so for those two, and then if you're looking at things like text to voice, there's some really good free ones that are also really user friendly. 11 Labs, I think, is probably my favorite because it's contextual.
One of the bigger players out there.
Yeah, well, it's contextual, so it will read into what you're writing. Sometimes it's really funny what it does because it will like misinterpret sarcasm and something else. But it really does sound very natural. So those are a couple of really user-friendly ones. And I would say throughout your day, I know because I do this, you have an idea of something that AI can do, write it down.
Yeah.
Because I know when you're like, okay, I have time to practice with AI. What am I going to do? And your brain just goes blank. So write those ideas down and then set aside 30 minutes and have fun.
Great advice. I'll just quickly add on, so many Microsoft organizations now, and often those have Office licenses that have Copilot built in. So if you happen to have that in your organization, or maybe you have a personal Office license with that, that's a great starting point. I'd also suggest Gemini through the Chrome browser. Google is integrating in Gemini more and more to their existing products. I noticed with my most recent Chrome update, all of a sudden Gemini is there now in Chrome, and I can ask it anything at any time. Microsoft does a similar thing with their Edge browser and Copilot. So just use whatever is convenient and accessible. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Just try it, try it where you're at and go from there. And it will lead to interesting places over time.
Sure. Well, I think we're just about up for time. So this was wonderful. I had so much fun with you, Matt.
Me
It's
too.
doing great. I hope we can do this again. This has been so much fun. But I just want to thank everybody for coming and for joining us today. And I really want to give a big thanks to Miriam for getting those questions and monitoring chat. And then of course, I want to thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great to work with you, Ronnie. Miriam, thank you for hosting. And we have our behind the scenes Brian here doing all of our tech for us. It takes a team. It's not just one of us. So thank you all for your participation. Really appreciate you coming out tonight to see us. We know your time is valuable. So thanks for making the attempt.
And be good to your AI agent because it might come back.
You're right. You're right. So you keep those please and thank yous.
And just to, you know, wrap up with real thank yous from real people, let me say thank you once again to Ronnie and Matt for joining us this evening and sharing their expertise. This has been a wonderful session. We've had lots of attendees, lots of hearts and clapping hands coming through there. So thank you for joining us and sharing with us. And it was our pleasure to host you. And thank you on behalf of University of Washington Continuum College and Professional and Continuing Education. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.